You don't get a say in my college stuff. You're not even blood. Josh didn't yell it. He didn't flinch or raise his eyes. Just tossed the words across the table like scraps meant for the floor. They weren't shouted in the heat of a fight. They were spoken flat, almost distractedly, the way you'd brush off a stranger offering unsolicited advice. Not venomous. Worse, indifferent. I sat there with the housing forms still spread across the table, a highlighter uncapped in my hand, deadlines circled in red. I'd spent the last few evenings combing through financial aid sites, drafting up what he might qualify for, mapping out what we could afford. I had even spoken with a counselor at the university to understand early application perks. I'd done it because Lindsay asked me to help, because I thought I still had a role in his life, because I remembered the 5-year-old who used to sleep curled up against my chest, gripping my shirt with a hand no bigger than a plum. And now this boy, no, this man, sat across from me and cut through 13 years of effort with a sentence that weighed less to him than the notifications on his phone. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. I pushed my chair back slowly, careful not to scrape the floor, walked out of the room, down the hall, and into the backyard, where the cold air slapped me across the face and reminded me I was still alive. I stood there, staring at the leafless tree line, listening to the distant hum of traffic and the emptiness of a house where I'd paid every damn utility bill. The porch light flickered above me, not from a faulty bulb, but from a circuit I still hadn't gotten around to replacing. That light was my whole life with Josh. Always flickering, always about to go dark, no matter how many times I tried to fix it. When I first met Lindsay, Josh was 5. His biological father, Alex, had already disappeared. 2 years gone. No calls, no visits, no child support. Lindsay didn't talk about him much. Said he left for California with a waitress and a suitcase full of promises, none of which included his son. I never tried to replace Alex. Never tried to steal a title I hadn't earned. I just showed up, quietly, consistently, the way you do when you want to matter without making it about you. School drop-offs, lost teeth, Halloween costumes made out of cardboard and desperation. I fixed broken toys and scraped knees. I worked overtime shifts to make birthdays feel like more than survival. When he was 9, we rebuilt his bike together, and he called me Dad without thinking. That word. It stopped me in my tracks. I didn't cry. I didn't make a speech. I just nodded and said, "Pass me the wrench." But inside, something settled. Not pride. Not joy. Something quieter. Like being chosen. Like being seen. I thought that was the turning point. It wasn't. Things started shifting around his 16th birthday. Not suddenly. More like the slow retreat of a tide you didn't realize was ever there. Josh grew quieter with me. More cautious. Conversations turned shorter. Eye contact became rare. He started deferring to Lindsay for every question, every decision, every tiny moment that once would have involved both of us. And then Alex reappeared. Out of nowhere. No warning. No explanation. Just walked back into Josh's life as if the past 14 years had been a sabbatical instead of an abandonment. He brought stories. Big ones. Talked about mistakes and regrets. About being ready now. About how he wanted to be part of Josh's future. He brought gifts, 2 flashy sneakers, a new phone, concert tickets. Things I couldn't compete with. Wouldn't try to. Josh ate it up. And me? I watched it happen like a man watching his own funeral. Quiet, unwanted, but unable to look away. Lindsay tried to mediate. Said things like, he's figuring it out, and it's important for him to know his father. I didn't argue. What could I say? That I was scared? That I felt the ground shifting under me? That I was losing a son who'd never technically been mine? No, I said nothing. I kept my head down. I kept paying. By the time senior year started, I had already prepaid most of Josh's tuition. It wasn't easy. I'd taken on weekend work, sold my old truck, cut corners on everything from groceries to car maintenance. I didn't tell Lindsay all the details. She knew we were stretched, didn't need to know how close to empty I really was. And I did it because I believed in something bigger than pride. I believed that when you love someone, you invest in them. Not just with money, but with the kind of sweat that doesn't show on bank statements. And I thought, stupidly, maybe that someday Josh would see the difference between love that shows up and love that just shows off. But all of that, the bike repairs, the late-night emergency room visits, the sleepless nights sitting beside his bed when he had the flu, all of it evaporated in one sentence. You don't get a say. You're not even blood. Like I was a stray dog at the dinner table, begging for scraps that weren't mine. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room, alone, the sound of the furnace humming like a distant engine. I opened my laptop, canceled the tuition check, deleted the saved payment method from the portal, pulled him off the emergency contact list. Every tab I closed felt like sealing a door, not out of spite, out of necessity. If I wasn't family, then I had no business carrying the weight of one. The next morning I told Lindsay, sat her down with a cup of coffee and walked her through every decision I had made the night before. She didn't interrupt, didn't protest. She just sat there, staring into her mug like it could explain how we had arrived here. He's just figuring it out, she said, barely above a whisper. No, I said. He's made it clear, and that was the worst of it. Not his rejection, but her passivity. Her willingness to let me be erased without resistance. 2 weeks passed. The air in the house changed. Josh didn't speak to me much. We were ghosts to each other. I didn't chase him. I didn't initiate. I just waited. And then, one afternoon, he came bouncing into the kitchen like nothing had happened. He waved a manila envelope in the air, his university welcome packet. Excitement beaming off him like sunlight. Hey, if I pay by Friday, I get first choice for housing. Can you co-sign the check? I was standing at the sink, rinsing a coffee mug. I didn't turn. Just let the water run over my hands until it scalded. Then I turned, dried my hands, and looked him straight in the eyes. Didn't you tell me to stay out of it? He blinked. The smile faltered. I mean, yeah, but I didn't think. You made it clear, I said, cutting him off. I heard you. I listened. You want to handle your own stuff? You're free to do that. He opened his mouth, closed it. For the first time in years, he didn't have a comeback. And I felt nothing. Not victory. Not vindication. Just a quiet confirmation of what I already knew. He didn't see me as a father. Only a service. One that had finally shut down. That night I sat in the garage. Not to fix anything. Not to think. Just to be away from the warmth of a house that no longer felt mine. The air smelled of oil and damp concrete. The overhead bulb flickered, casting a shaky shadow of a man who no longer recognized the life he'd built. I thought I'd feel relief, maybe even a shred of justice, after telling Josh no. Instead, I just felt empty. Not hollow. Not defeated. Just stripped of something I never fully had to begin with. When you raise a child who isn't yours, you do it on borrowed time. I thought about all the things I used to do without being asked. The groceries I kept stocked, the spontaneous fast food runs when he aced a test, the nights I waited in the car while he finished practice. I thought about the passwords saved in my phone, the automatic transfers I'd set up without a word, all the invisible threads that held his world together. So I cut them, silently, precisely. The next day, I logged into every account tied to Josh's life. I revoked his access to the emergency card, disabled the prepaid debit account, removed myself as financial guarantor from his dorm application. And most importantly, I withdrew the full college fund I had built for him over 10 years. Every dollar. Back into my name. No warnings. No drama. Just quiet decisions, the kind that bleed louder than words. That evening, I told Lindsay what I'd done. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just sat on the edge of the bed and whispered, "He'll never forgive you." I looked at her for a long time. He never thanked me. We slept in silence. The kind that isn't peace, just a pause before something breaks. A week passed. Then Josh walked into my home office one night, uninvited. His face was lit up, bright and urgent. In his hands was a folder, the kind universities send to make you feel special. He dropped it onto my desk like a gift. "Dad, if I pay by Friday, I get first choice on housing," he said, eyes glowing. It's all in here. The meal plans, dorm assignments, everything. I didn't look at the folder. Just kept typing. He waited. Thought I hadn't heard. Dad? I paused, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then I looked up at him. Calm. Flat. You should check with your father, I said. First, he didn't get it. What? You said Alex is guiding you. That I'm just your mom's husband. So this sounds like something for him. His mouth opened, but no words came. You're serious? Completely. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't scold. I didn't repeat myself. I just went back to typing emails, invoices, anything to fill the void of that room. He stood there for another second, then left. The next 2 days were quiet. Too quiet. Lindsay watched me like a woman watching a fuse burn, unsure when the explosion would come. But I'd already exploded. Just not with volume, with absence. On the 3rd day, her phone rang. We were in the kitchen. She answered, and I saw her face drain of color within seconds. It was Josh, she said when she hung up. He asked Alex for help. I waited. Her eyes darted up to meet mine. Alex said he's broke. I said nothing. She kept going, trying to fill the silence with hope that didn't exist. He told Josh he can't help. Said it's not his job. Said, it's your job. I turned back to the dishes. Let the hot water burn my hands. She whispered, what do we do? I didn't answer, 'cause I wasn't sure who she meant by we anymore. That night, around 11 p.m., I heard a knock on the office door. It was late enough to be urgent, but soft enough to be ashamed. I opened it. Josh stood there, eyes red, shoulders slumped. He didn't look like the kid who spat on 13 years. He looked like the boy who used to sit on my lap and ask me why stars moved. He didn't say, hey. He didn't say, Dad. He said, I screwed up. I stepped aside, let him in. He didn't sit. Just stood there like he couldn't decide which way to fall. I called Alex, he said. Told him I needed help. Told him I needed someone to co-sign. He said that's your job. That he's not really part of this. He rubbed at his face, trying to wipe away shame like sweat. Then he hung up, and there it was. Fantasy met reality. Alex, the resurrected hero of Josh's senior year, the man who showed up with stories and sneakers, had vanished again the moment he was asked for something real. Not advice, not praise, but responsibility. The kind I had given for over a decade. Josh looked up, eyes cracked and pleading. Can you be my dad again? A simpler man might have cried. A weaker man might have hugged him. But I wasn't a man anymore. Not to him. I was the ATM that breathed. I leaned back in my chair. Let the weight of his words sit in the space between us. Being a dad isn't seasonal, I said. It's not a role you hand out when things go south. And it sure as hell isn't earned with apologies made when the lights go out. He didn't reply. Just stood there, drowning in the silence he had dug. You said I wasn't your father, I said, more to the air than to him. You said I didn't matter. I didn't mean it, he whispered. That's the thing about truth, I said. It doesn't care if you meant it. It just stays. He stepped forward, voice shaking. I'll pay for some of it. I'll get a job. I'll do whatever. No, I interrupted. You don't get to set terms. You don't get to negotiate your way back into the life you stepped out of. He looked like he might cry. I didn't flinch. Then, quietly, I said, you want me back? Then you show up. Not when things fall apart. Not when the other man fails. Every day. With respect. With effort. You show me that I matter before you ask me to carry you. He nodded slowly. No words. Just a boy learning that bridges burn silently. But the crossing back is loud, heavy, and paved with splinters. I let him leave the room without another word. The next morning, I found a note under my coffee mug. Thank you for not slamming the door. It wasn't much, but it was more than I'd gotten in years. And for the first time in weeks, I drank my coffee while it was still hot. I didn't say yes that night. Not outright. Not in a way he could pin down and lean on again. What I gave Josh was something harder, something he couldn't manipulate with a well-timed apology. Conditions. Real ones. Ones that came with the weight of effort, of consequence, of growing up. If I help, I told him, the next morning over black coffee in silence. You'll meet me halfway. He looked confused, maybe even hopeful. You'll pay for your own books, I said. You'll work part-time. You'll cover part of your meals, your phone plan, whatever else you can. I'll handle tuition and housing, but not your life. He didn't argue, didn't flinch, just nodded, like a man trying not to spook the only lifeboat left on a sinking ship. And I believed him, not because I trusted his words, but because I knew he'd tasted something worse than discipline. Abandonment. And unlike lectures, that flavor stays in the mouth for years. 3 weeks later, on move-in day, the car was packed to bursting. Lindsay cried twice before we even left the driveway. Josh barely spoke during the ride, just stared out the window like the scenery might give him answers. When we pulled up to the dorms, he didn't jump out with excitement. He sat there, hands folded, like he was waiting for something. He turned and looked at me, not at Lindsay, me. Thanks, Dad, he said. Not Thomas. Not man who paid for my life. Not my mom's husband. Just Dad. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a plea. It was a recognition. A small, tired acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, he finally saw what I'd been carrying all these years. I nodded once. Didn't smile. Didn't speak. Because forgiveness isn't a conversation. It's a ledger. And some debts can't be cleared in a weekend. The next 6 weeks passed without much noise. Josh texted now and then, mostly about dorm drama, cafeteria food, professors he couldn't understand. I didn't push. I didn't demand updates. I let him come to me, because that's what real fatherhood is, showing up without being summoned. Then came the call. It was a Thursday night, around 10:12 p.m. I remember the exact time because I just poured myself a drink. One of those rare evenings where the house was quiet and the whiskey hit just right. My phone buzzed. Josh. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. I already knew this wasn't a social call. That time of night. It's never, hey, how are you? I answered. His voice cracked like a dry branch. Dad. I got in a wreck. Instant panic. But before my mouth could ask the 1,000 questions crowding my throat, he added, I'm okay. Not my fault. Some guy rear-ended me. Cops are here. I gave them your number. There it was. Not, I need help. Not, can you fix this? Just, I gave them your number. Because when the shit hits the fan, paperwork speaks louder than blood. 15 minutes later, a local officer called me. Your son's fine, he said. Just a fender bender. He gave us your info as his emergency contact. And that was the moment. Not the crash. Not the call. Not even the sound of Josh's voice. Shaken and raw. It was that phrase, your son. Not the boy you raised. Not your stepson. Just your son. Because when the metal twists and the airbags explode, the world doesn't care about biology. Cares about who shows up. And I had always shown up. When the officer hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time. The drink still in my hand, untouched. 13 years of fatherhood, erased in a sentence. And now, slowly, painfully, being rewritten by actions. Josh called me again the next day, this time with his voice steadier. I talked to the insurance, he said. They need a cosigner on the claim. They said it'd move faster if you. I'll handle it, I said, flat. No emotion. Just a man doing what he's always done. He paused. Thanks. You'll need to cover the deductible, I added. Yeah, I figured. I'm picking up extra shifts this weekend at the bookstore. That made me pause. Good, I said. Not because I needed the money, but because effort is the only apology I accept anymore. A week later, Josh came home for the weekend. Just a casual visit. No hidden motive. No crisis. He walked in carrying a brown envelope and handed it to me without fanfare. Inside was a check for $300. What's this? I asked. For books, he said. I know you covered tuition, but you said I had to contribute. I stared at the check. Not because I needed it. Because he meant it. I'm proud of you, I said finally. He smiled, shrugged like it wasn't a big deal. But I could see it in his eyes, that it meant everything. That night he sat on the porch with me. Just us. No phones. No screens. He asked me about my job, my tools, my first car. Questions that came not from obligation, but interest. It wasn't some grand reconciliation. It wasn't a Hallmark ending. But it was real. And real is all I ever wanted. Later, as he packed up to head back, he hugged me. Not a stiff, one-arm thing. A real hug. Love you, Dad, he said. Still catches me off guard when he says it. Like a punch and a prayer at the same time. Because I know how close we came to losing this. Not to death. Not to time. But to pride. And now he calls just to talk. Not for money. Not for bailouts. Just to talk. Sometimes he sends me pictures, his dorm, his job, even his lunches. Like he wants me to be part of the life he's building, not just the foundation it stands on. And I let him, because I remember what it felt like to be erased. And because I refuse to do the same to him. But I never forget. Not the words. Not the silence that followed. Not the months where I felt like a stranger in the home I built. So I love him, yes, but I do not forget. Because forgiveness is earned in bricks, not flowers. And every day he shows up, that's one more brick. One more piece of the bridge we're trying to rebuild. This time with no fantasy. Only truth. The phone rang again yesterday. Josh. Not a panic call. Not a money ask. Just him on a slow Tuesday evening wanting to talk about job interviews. He's 20 now. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't calling because something was broken or because a deadline was breathing down his neck. He just wanted to know what to wear to a second-round interview. Dark suit or gray? He asked. They said it's casual, but, I smiled. A small one. The gray, I said. Less like a funeral. More like you want the job. He laughed. Thought so. We talked for 20 minutes about handshake pressure, elevator pitches, all the little things you only learn by failing once or twice. He listened, asked questions, even took notes. I could hear the scratch of his pen on the other end. I imagined him sitting cross-legged on that battered dorm mattress, scribbling onto a lined notebook like his life depended on it. Didn't, but his pride did. He's different now. Still rough around the edges, still figuring it out. But he's trying. And the difference? He tries with me now. Back then, before the break, everything he asked for came with an unspoken assumption. That I'd pay, that I'd fix, that I'd catch him before he hit the ground. The world was soft because I made it so. And the softest things are always taken for granted. Until they're gone. When he told me I wasn't blood, it wasn't just disrespect. It was a severing. A clean slice through everything we'd built. It meant I was an accessory, not essential, not permanent. And for months I believed him. But respect is earned in absence. That's what no one tells you. When I stepped away, not in anger but in clarity, the silence did what years of sacrifice couldn't. Spoke louder. It revealed who actually held the weight. It showed him what a father is, not a title but a pattern. Not presence on paper, but consistency in the grind. That wreck? That night with the cops? That was the crack in his fantasy. But it wasn't the collapse. That came slowly. Like the way he started budgeting on his own, not because I told him to, but because he didn't want to come back empty-handed. Like the first time he called me about his paycheck. Not because it was short, but because he wanted to know how to save some of it. Like when he texted me at midnight last month. I get it now. About what it cost. I get it. No explanation. No prompt. Just that. I didn't reply right away. Took me a full day. Not because I didn't believe him. Because I had to decide whether I was ready to accept it. I wrote back, good. Don't forget it. And he hasn't. Every time he visits now, he brings something. A bag of groceries. Coffee for me. Even once, a used socket wrench he found cheap. Said he thought I could use a backup in the garage. He doesn't need to do those things. That's the point. He does them anyway. Lindsay sees it too. She's quieter these days, more watchful. The way she looks at me has changed. Less expectation, more recognition. She never apologized for not stepping in when he dismissed me. She probably never will. But now, when Josh thanks me, she nods too. Like maybe she's finally understanding what the silence cost. We still don't talk about that night. The dinner. The words. I don't think we need to. Some things are too sharp to unpack without bleeding again. The closest we ever came was last Christmas. Josh had come home early, unannounced. Said he wanted to help cook. Spent most of the afternoon peeling potatoes badly and making a mess of the gravy. But I let him. We drank, we joked, we stayed up long after the dishes were done. Then, after Lindsay went to bed, he and I sat on the couch. Fire low. Glasses half empty. He leaned back and said, I don't remember what I was thinking back then. I didn't say anything. Just stared into the fireplace, waiting. I think. I just didn't want to owe anyone anything. Especially not you. That hit harder than I expected. He wasn't rejecting me. He was running from the debt. The emotional one. The one built from years of packed lunches, missed vacations, and bills paid with overtime shifts no one saw. I nodded. Debt's not always about money, I said. He nodded back. Yeah, I know that now. That was it. No long speeches. No teary confessions. Just mutual awareness. The kind that sits between men who failed each other and somehow found a way back. Not to the same place, but to somewhere real. He still calls me Dad. Every time. It doesn't sound forced now. It sounds like something he had to re-earn, and values more because of it. The money is still there. I still help. I still cover what matters. But now there's no entitlement. Only cooperation. He lets me invest, not rescue. That's the difference. 2 weeks ago, he called me from the campus bookstore. Said he found a used edition of a text he needed. Saved $40. Sounded proud. Then he paused. Said, I used to think I deserved everything. Just because you married my mom. Another pause. Now I think you deserved better. And I want to be better. I didn't know what to say. Still don't. So I said, keep going. Because that's all I've ever asked from him. Keep going. Keep growing. Keep stepping toward the man you pretend to be when life is good. And become him when it's not. Sometimes, Lindsay will ask me, late at night, do you think he really changed? I never give her a simple answer. Because it's not a simple question. Change doesn't happen in a moment. It happens in the little choices no one claps for. Like picking up your dishes. Like calling without needing something. Like remembering the face of the man who stood by you when no one else did. And choosing to stand beside him, not because you have to, but because you should. Josh is still learning. So am I. I'm learning to let go of the past without forgetting it. I'm learning that love without self-respect isn't love at all. It's martyrdom. And I'm learning that sometimes, the only way to fix what's broken is to leave it broken long enough for the other person to see what it costs to shatter it. We made it through. Barely. But we made it. And now? Now he calls for advice. Not money. He calls to ask how to negotiate a raise. He asks how to fix a leaky faucet. He texts me pictures of his cooking disasters. Looking for rescue. And I give it gladly. Because this time, I'm not being used. I'm being included. So tell me, was I wrong to pull back? Was I wrong to make him feel the weight of his words? Was I wrong to wait for respect before offering love again? Or was that the only way for him to learn that fathers aren't made by blood? They're made by effort, by presence, by silence, and sometimes by stepping away. So the ones who took you for granted can learn what the world looks like without you. Would you have endured it? Would you have waited? Would you still pick up the phone now? Because I did. And I'm still listening.